But moving into Superman and Lois, it's the penultimate episode. I wanted to get a temperature check on our thoughts for Lex, this iteration of Lex in the it's not the the Arrowverse adjacent series.
Well, I have to say, Lex Luthor is known for his larger than life presence, and Michael Cudlitz definitely brought that. You felt the gravity of Lex. Over the years we've seen many variations of Lex Luthor. There's a campy element. There's whatever that version Jesse Eisenberg was doing in the DCEO, and then of course there's the larger than life, not to be trifled with kind of Lex Luthor. Michael Cudlitz is definitely going to be that version of Lex, and I feel like that came across really well. It was an unusual episode of an introduction, and I'm sure we'll get into all of that. But I would like to say that I felt every bit of the gravity they've built up as far as Lex Luthor goes. They've mentioned his name here, there. They've mentioned that he was in prison. They've mentioned that he's the devil. I feel like we saw all of that in this episode, and that definitely came across for me.
Now, I've only seen one version of Lex Luthor in my entire life. This was like the polar opposite. Not what I was expecting. I don't know if that's good or bad. Still, figuring that out. So I guess indifferent currently. Sabrina, how about you?
I liked him. I think, I mean, my issues with the story aside, I thought that Michael Cudlitz's performance, he does give a lot of gravitas to the role. It is very mobster, which is good because we're coming off of Bruno, who also was very mobster businessman, like dynamic expression in the show. So I just felt like I didn't need the long walk from him, but I also watching the whole episode, I was like, I feel like this would be controversial, but if he had just had his own episode, if we had a higher episode count, Lex probably would have had an episode to himself with potentially flashbacks of the time when Lois put him in jail with her reporting. It just felt like it was pieced together because they didn't get the episode count they wanted. Like if we had 15 episodes, he might have gotten a standalone. I think the story would have been helped from that. But I did appreciate that he plays the long game, and that was showed in the storyline that he had. I mean, the brutal beating he took because he knew he's like, I don't need to actually have power over you by being aggressive towards you myself. I need to get into the office with the warden because he's the one who has true power. And when that was revealed, because I was like, I know he's not just letting himself get clocked like this just because, like, there has to be a reason. And when they revealed the reason, I was like, oh, those inmates' lives are going to be wrecked. And that was exactly what happened because I was trying to figure out, because I think in the first few minutes, you see inmates standing outside of their cells. And I was like, why are they standing like butlers? What is this? What type of universe? Why is this being allowed? And I thought the man who dropped the note on his desk telling him that he was free, I thought that was somehow his body man or like one of his people. And I was like, when it was the warden, I was like, oh, the warden is acting like he's the butler. This is weird and kind of cool. Where are we going with this? It kind of fizzled after that, but I did enjoy the building up of that story.
And I agree with you when the warden dropped that and then he said yes sir, I was like, why is the warden saying yes sir, and why is the warden being so polite to him, like almost in a fearful kind of way. But we saw the same thing on Supergirl. When Lex Luthor gets into prison, he controls things from the inside out, and I thought that was a very effective introduction of him, because the thing about Lex is he doesn't usually use his brawn to manipulate people. He uses his brain, and that's definitely what we saw here. Of course, I do think this Lex Luthor is very well built and could use his brawn if he wanted to. But I think the dangerous thing about Lex is, like you said, he plays the long game. The pieces are always working in his mind. The cogs are always turning, and that's what he did. He ultimately got what he wanted. When he had the warden ring his own home and find out that his family was in danger, such a Lex Luthor thing to do. He's such an intimidating screen presence right from the off. And I really like that. I did have a little giggle to myself because I remember when we first brought up Lex and the walk on the highway, you said, Reed, oh, that'll be the last shot of season 3 and he'll never make it to Smallville. And I was like, well, we're lucky. That? Yeah. I was like, well, we're kind of lucky. We're kind of lucky that wasn't, because he almost didn't make it to Smallville because it took the whole episode. But I mean, he got there in the end. I kind of did see the fact that he was showing up outside Clark and Lois's house coming, because that was not the highway to Metropolis. That looked like the highway that Clark revealed himself to Lana
It looked
on.
like the highway that Dean Winchester was in the opening shot or the ending shot of the Winchesters. I was like, this is giving me Supernatural. Why?
Vancouver, they all look the same. But yeah, totally. I kind of saw the fact that he would show up there outside their house coming. The scene was worth the wait. The screaming on the porch might have been a choice, but I think it definitely got the idea that Lex was desperate at this point. He was kind of broken by his time inside, but I did love the fact that Lois wasn't afraid to stand up to him, and it was like, wait, I might have got it wrong, but you deserve to be in prison. So I feel like that's going to be the tug of war. He thinks he's an innocent man because he went down for the wrong crime, but everybody else knows he's guilty of something, and he served the time he should have served. So I think that'll come into the finale, play into the finale really, really well. I'm excited to see where it kind of goes, because we know he's going to be a big presence next season. So how's he going to factor into the finale and still manage to stick around after that? Some interesting questions there, but I thought it was a solid introduction to him, even if some of the rest of the episode let it down.
Can I ask a question about the prison that holds zero importance?
Mm-hmm. Go for it.
It was called Strikers, right?
Yeah.
Is that like a thing in the Superman universe?
I believe it is a prison in the comics. I'm cutting this if I'm wrong. I believe it is a prison in the comics. Someone's mentioned Strikers Island and something I've watched before, but I can't remember what it is.
Is that a play on Rikers?
It might be. You might be right.
Because it was giving me like Riverdale when when Veronica calls it like the Glamberger egg or whatever, and they talk about Bailey's Comet, and it was like, it kind of like, I was like, whoa, they don't really do this kind of thing in this show. It was kind of a weird moment of like comic camp, and I was like, oh, it took me aback, and it kind of made me giggle. Okay, continue.
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. Sometimes you will see little things like that, like the '60s Batman. Instead of going to London, they went to Londinium, and instead of getting help from Scotland Yard, they got help from Ireland Yard. Classic little '60s nods to the comics. I guess that's what it is, but I am pretty sure Strikers was not a creation of Superman and Lois. It was already existed in the comics before that.
Yeah, I feel like the show doesn't usually do stuff like that, because it feels so, at least to me, it feels so like centered in like reality.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really like comic-y.
Yeah.
At least to me. I'm gonna keep reiterating, at least to me.
You're not wrong. No, you're not wrong. This is the most realistic version of Superman we ever had.
Oh yeah, okay. Well, I'm validated.
One thing I do want to touch on with Lex, which I think is actually a through line that's throughout this season, potentially in the entirety of Superman and Lois, is the importance of parenthood. Because his large grievance is that he missed his daughter's coming of age. His 20 years in prison. She's a grown person at this point. And I remember kept thinking, I was like, we've been dealing a lot with parents in this show, and how they feel about raising their kids and how hard it is to be a parent and trying to navigate that road. I assume, since they showed us a picture of her and he wasn't just screaming on the porch just cause, that we will see an adult version of her, if not in the finale, then in season 4. Mm-hmm. And so that'll be interesting. I can't help but think about the snap in Marvel, like, and how that changed parent child relationships because of the 5-year gap. And so I always find that fascinating when, you're dealing with a parent who lost time, and what that looks like, and how the child, the adult child at this point, adjusts to having them back. I think he said that she won't speak to him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And he had a murder charge, correct? So
yes.
I do wonder if, like, we will see him getting to be a father again because he was innocent, which is interesting to me, because I'm like, are you mad that it was a murder charge and you personally haven't gone as far as murder, even though you had people killed? Or are you mad because you were innocent of the crime, period? Like, I know it took 20 years of his life. I'm also wondering if he would have dealt better with it if he had contact with his daughter.
Mm-hmm. And I thought that as well. It's the same kind of thing with Bruno, who was a completely one-dimensional villain in the comics. Lex is obviously far more interesting in the comics, but he's like a mastermind who's out to serve his own needs. He wants to be considered the man of tomorrow. He doesn't like that Superman gets all this attention. Yet here we have a man angry at the fact that he missed out on his daughter's life and that she's made an assumption about him that wasn't true. Even though, let's be honest, the assumption was true. We know Lex has had people killed. We know he's a bad person. He just happened to get the wrong thing pinned on him. And it did this whole season's raised an interesting question because Lois and Clark are paragons of integrity. They knew it was probably Lex was where he deserved to be, but they got him released because they caught him for the wrong thing. Whereas a lot of other people would probably keep him locked up because it would be right to keep him off the streets. So I feel like that's going to weigh on them as well. The fact that his daughter won't talk to him now might weigh on them as well because he was accused of something he didn't do. It's definitely going a long way in making this like one-liner, manipulative kind of spewing villain a lot more well-rounded, and I feel like we will see that more. I remember saying last week when we talked about the cast cuts, okay, we have the four Kents, but Lex isn't going to be involved in the family dynamic. What's Lex going to do for 10 episodes? Well, now we have a potential storyline for Lex. We probably won't see the daughter next week because next week it'll be all about getting revenge in the finale and whatever Bizarro's up to. That'll be all about that. But I feel like when we come back, time will have passed, we'll have settled down, and we will see maybe Lex trying to reconnect with his daughter, which again, just like it did with Bruno, would hopefully add a lot more depth to him.
How old would this daughter be?
Did he say she was 14 when he was imprisoned, which 20 years ago, which would suggest she's 34 now, I think?
I'm not gonna lie to you. I've been dreamcasting this whole time you guys have been talking.
Do you have...
Give us ideas.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to like be confined to age, but I was like, how funny and like full circle would it be if it was like Kristen Kruk?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
that would be awesome.
That would
Like,
be so great.
But I'm like, I don't know what the budget is for any guest roles. So I'm like, can they afford a former Miss Lana Lang? I don't know, but that'd be fun. That's all I got right now.
Yeah, that would be amazing. And the Superman mythology is known for casting people like Erica Durance, who played Lois on Smallville, of course, showed up as Kara's second mom on Supergirl. Helen Slater, who played Supergirl in the movie, played Kara's adoptive mom on Supergirl. So the Superman mythology knows how to cast like legacy actors and bring them in. So I think that would be really cool. I do feel like
even who played Supergirl in Smallville?
Oh,
the blonde one,
Laura Vandervoort. Yes.
There's another one.
Yes,
like,
that's a good one.
Who's in Smallville that we can put in here in season 4?
I take any of it, but I again, if it's a one episode role, they'll probably be able to get them recurring. Who knows? I hate that we even have to have this conversation. I wouldn't be surprised if they pulled a twist and it ended up being someone like Leslie Lar, remember, who was Morgan Edge's right-hand woman, because she was a redhead, and of course Lex's child would have to be a redhead. So okay. I wouldn't be surprised if they did that. But then I
didn't know we had hair color.
I think the daughter had red hair in the photo, and Lex is naturally red, naturally a redhead.
She dyed her hair to separate herself from her family,
to free herself from that life. I love that we've just storyline season 4 here, and suddenly all a lot more excited about it. But yeah, like I said, I just think that's far more interesting. We definitely have a Lex that's physically dangerous and mentally dangerous, but let's humanize him a little bit. I think that's all. Reed, the Lex you're familiar with is the most human Lex we've ever had. The one on Smallville is by far the most human version of the character. And don't get me wrong, I love a campy Lex who likes to shoot missiles at space and whatever for no reason whatsoever and have the time of his life doing it. But this show likes to give people storylines, likes to give people depth, and likes to give them something outside of shooting missiles and using kryptonite. So hopefully we'll see that. And talking about it, I'm actually even more excited than I was. The episode wasn't perfect, but it was a solid introduction to the character, and I can't wait to see where he goes with it.
I'm intrigued, though, by the vendetta storyline, because if this was anyone else, if it was like Lois Lane got it wrong, horribly wrong, someone lost their, lost a significant portion of their life and time with the people that they love, his demand that she retire would have weight. It would carry water. Like, people would be like, she didn't rush anything. It's not her fault. Like, how was she supposed to know that there was a meta out there that could change their voice and pretend that they were Lex Luthor in order to have her be able to build a story that would put him behind jail? Like, that's like a very like intricate, complicated, complex type of thing to have to navigate. But I did really enjoy, besides the screen, I did really enjoy the porch scene because Lois does take responsibility for something that was basically out of her control, but she did realize that, he did lose time. And she says, I'm sorry. Like she apologizes, I think twice. But that's all he's getting out of her because she's also like, you were a bad, bad man. I'm not dropping my career because I was wrong about this thing, even though it did take time from you. I think that is a interesting story point for everybody involved because I think you're right, Michael, that there's going to be guilt there. Not guilt over, putting a bad man behind bars, but guilt over getting it wrong and how that can affect people and that his daughter lost time with her father. Like, I think that is something that could eat away at Lois. But Lois is also going to be like, I said what I said about the apology, and now I'm done with it, and don't threaten me. And I love Clark stood in front of her, and of course, Lex doesn't care, but he's suddenly like, you need to leave. Now it's like, yes. Yeah.
Right.
Because as Reed is always saying, like, Clark's a very solid dude. We don't know why they don't treat him like he's a solid man, but he is. And not that Lex was intimidated, but Lex did not step any closer. So I appreciated that too.
I noticed the same thing. I was going to say, wait, nobody takes Clark seriously, but suddenly Lex might be. Because at first he was like, shut your mouth when Clark stepped up, but then Clark stepped forward and roared and got like a little bit more serious, such a stern look on his face. And Lex kind of had that moment where he was almost like looking through the glasses, like, I've seen that kind of look before, obviously from Superman. Obviously he didn't make the connection. But then, I mean, like, fair play. Of all the people to take Clark seriously, it was Lex Luthor of all people. Kyle, he'll rage into a war for no reason whatsoever, but Lex took him seriously. But I love that scene because everybody was traditionally who they're supposed to be. Lex was angry, as Lex likes to be, and we've seen Bitsy play multiple versions of Lois. She's been a loving wife, a determined reporter, a great mother, but here we got to see her be the traditional Lois Lane, where at first she took responsibility for her actions, but then she was like, do you know what, I've had enough of this, you deserve to be behind bars, and walked forward. Icon, love that moment, and Clark is protective as always. That was probably my favorite scene from the episode because, like we said, this episode could be infuriating at times, but that scene wasn't one of them.
More to that point, can we keep talking about Clark? I think you know where I'm veering into here with a certain teenager.
Yes. Yep. Clark was tried today. Well, not today, but in that episode. And it was like, did not deserve the energy that he got whatsoever at any point in the episode. Like,
I thought I made myself clear when Kyle tried it. Like, what? And now Jordan's putting his hands on his dad. What is happening?
I don't know.
Unacceptable.
The instant regret in Jordan's face. And I'm like, yeah, maybe you should have thought about that 4 seconds ago.
Yeah.
Oh, the hurt on Clark's face, too. Like, I think he's snatching his arm away, but he does it by using his powers. And that was like so much. I was like, why would you buckle your father? First, that's Clark. He loves you. He adores you. He just wants you to like not get a big head. Second, he's Superman. What do you think you're doing?
People forget this. And I'm like, what's not clicking? I'm going to say something that I just thought of and remembered that I don't think anybody's going to like. So let's all just like go into this knowing that. But I didn't like what Sam said after. And I know Sam has fans and shooters, but can we all just stay with me here? It's not that big of a deal. But he said you need to rein him in. And I'm like, not the thing to say in the moment. Not wrong. But it reminded me of something he said earlier in the season in the episode when Lois was not, she was trying to get out of her treatments. And he said to Clark, like, something to the fact that he was putting the responsibility on Clark to get Lois to do her treatments. And I'm like, I don't like this part of Sam. I don't like the way that they make, like, yes, Jordan is Clark's son. Yes, he has some responsibility to parent him and make sure he doesn't do those things. But Clark can't control the people around him, even if he is Superman. I'm like, it just bugs me when Sam does that stuff because maybe I am just too protective of Clark. So I'm like, can you just chill, father-in-law?
It's very traditional, and Clark is not like a traditional father. I feel like Sam is very hands-on in the sense that it comes off really gruff. It's which is why, like, I had actually a problem with Clark's line about "this is my house." Like, if you want to live here, you live by my rules. It's like that feels out of character for Clark to say. But I was trying to like give reason for the line, and I was like, is it because he just feels completely out of control? Because Jordan is not listening. And I mean, Jordan's been so rude. Like, it was so rude in that kitchen scene. But I was like, that felt like something Sam would say. And like Clark doesn't tend. Clark's usually like, I want to, give them a chance to get through their feelings. Like, I want to be respected, but like I also want to work through and see their perspective. But also, you need to bring it back. I think he's having such a hard time with Jordan though, because Jordan, a lot like most of the teens on the show, which kind of makes sense. But I think he's a very extreme version of it. It's his way or the highway, and he feels like his parents are treating him that way. And it's like, no, you have no idea what it's like to have the exposure that Clark does as Superman. He is trying to save you, especially as someone like, they also know about his personality. Like, it's great when you're getting the praise. The one thing the show doesn't often show is how much pushback there is about Superman. Like, because I think they like to do the whole truth and hope and being there for everybody and being a global superhero. But I wonder if we're going to start getting into that portion that they don't talk about on the show that much, which is that there are actual people that do not care for Superman and want to regulate him and feel like he should not be given as much leeway as he is. And I was like, Jordan, you've never had to handle that, and you're a teenager. Like, he's a grown man navigating it. You are 16 years old. Like, the American government could decide to go. Like, the only thing keeping them from doing that is that his grandfather is in the DoD, the head of DoD.
And you know who really likes to regulate Superman? Lex Luthor. And we now have an evil Superman on the loose out there. So this is actually quite an interesting time for the storyline to come up. Could Lex go after Jordan when he knows there's another superhero out there? Jordan is completely reckless. We've known that since season one. It is getting way out of hand. I do agree, Reed, about what Sam said, that he seems to descend into that. He can be such a cuddly grandfather when he wants to be, but he seems to descend into that soldier-like mentality and that you need to get control of the situation, and he blames it all on Clark. And let's be honest, Sam has quite a good relationship with Jordan. Maybe he's the one who could get through to him. I just feel like, yes, I understand why the attention was on Clark, because he's the super person who can control the other super person, but he's struggling now and they're hitting the wall. Maybe Sam's the right person to do that. I don't know. But yeah, it was strange having to see Clark push to that point, because Jordan kept pushing in that episode. I don't really love how that all came up with the whole Jordan and Sarah thing. Sarah came off as quite petty, even though she had a point and whatever. I feel like they're really struggling with the portrayal of those two characters. And so when both of them are at loggerheads over something like that, you're like, okay, but whose side am I on? And honestly, the answer is none at this point. Honestly. And then they get Lana and Lois involved to make you choose a side. And you're like, well, I'm not choosing between the two of them. So it's really, I don't know where they're going with it. No, that's wrong. I do know where they're going with it. I don't know why it needed to go in this direction, because it was a very frustrating episode. I mean, on the Jordan end, it worked like a dream because we were supposed to be frustrated with him. But like, yeah, it kind of escalated overnight. Like, we think, of course, people knew he existed because that reporter, I mentioned to you guys the other day about how that reporter that Lois worked with in Metropolis might pop up more in season 4. And there she was, Janet, running the story about Jordan. So we know the attention's on Jordan. But like, he made that situation a heck of a lot worse. The tornado scene, incredible. But then he landed and started posing with people for photos. Not even Superman does that. We don't need to be at that. And like, it just feels like Jordan's learned nothing at this point. We're running out of time to make him learn the lesson before the end of the season. Will he, or will part of the fallout be what season 4 is all about?
I was kind of scared that Sarah was gonna like tweet out his secret, because she said at the end of that scene with Lana, she was like, if he doesn't care about a secret, why should I? And she pulled up her phone. I was like, are you about to tweet it? But I forgot she's just a teenage girl, and when you're a teenager, you just pull up your phone and you're like, I'm gonna go on TikTok. I don't want to talk about this anymore.
I was scared too, because the energy in the lines that they had for her very much seemed like she was just going to say it. And she's like, fine, if you don't care, then I don't care. So the next time someone asks me about it, I'm just going to be like, it's Jordan. lives down the
Mm-hmm.
way in the farmhouse. Like I like I just she was giving a lot of that. I was there for her perspective in terms of the stress of lying, especially because her lie was terrible. Like it just really was the worst lie to be like, I don't know, we ended up on the street. I
No,
don't
yeah,
know.
no
It's
effort
like,
was made in that lie. I'm sorry.
like so I get like being stressed about that part of it. But the other side is just like she's had what, a month, 2 months with it. Like imagine being the person who has to hold on to that for life. I think that's probably the what she's starting to understand, like how much that could just ruin your relationships with people. And I do get that it would affect her life in the sense that if his name did get out, that she dated Jordan. So then everyone's going to be like, when did you know? How did you know? And she could be put in danger, which is not what she's talking about. Those are not her talking points. But if I were to be fair and give her talking points, that's what I would be seeing what she's concerned about. Like, I don't want to be at the center of the storm with you, but I'm going to be dragged into the center of the storm with you if you're not careful. Because if people put two and two together, they're also going to know that I'm associated with you and that my family's associated with you. And then how are we going to navigate Smallville?
Mm-hmm. And I think that's the problem with Sarah. She does have a point. She really does have a point. But because she's kind of clashed with everyone leading up to this moment, I did do a deep dive on the internet to see what the fans were thinking. And people find it very hard to relate to her, understand what she was feeling because of the way she came across as like you said, she kind of gave the impression of, you know what, I'm going to tell everybody. And she's kind of had that before. It feels like the gravity of certain situations don't weigh on her. And that now that this one is, it just felt like she was acting the same. I don't know. I had a tough time with this show does such seamless writing that you kind of can't see the writer's work at hand. Completely felt like I saw it play out and knew exactly how it was going to go this week. And I thought that kind of let it down.
But that scene with Lana and Sarah, I was like so disconnected to it because Lana was asking, she seemed more like surprised and I don't want to say outraged, whatever that emotion was she was feeling. Sarah wasn't matching it. It just felt like they were on two different, which is like understandable. But I was like, it feels like they're not communicating the same situation. There was a disconnect for me in that moment. And I'm like, I don't know. Who am I? What? I had nothing to grasp in that scene besides like, oh, was she tweeting it? That was all I really got from it.
I think it was like paradoxical because I feel like Sarah was giving somehow both anger and nonchalance. And like Lana was like, wait, what? He's doing what? And so we just go and talk to his parents, which again, the anger over even like, why did you say something to Lois and Clark? Like, because their son is out here about to expose the secret. What is she supposed to do? Just sit on it? Like he's running around town, like not being careful. I did love in the tornado, like Clark is just yelling at him. He's like, I don't need your help. What?
He just let his flew on and left him there.
Like, cause it's so transparent. And I did love Sarah's takedown of Jordan, you know, when he was talking about like, I was just saying that it was a good job because they were picking on Jordan, she's like, picking on Junior. She's like, you don't like Junior. That was not about defending Junior. It was about you getting recognition in some way. And he's like, why can't I just have recognition? It's like, because you can't. It's like, I know, you know, it's rude to be like the wrong brother got powers, but I feel like a lot of the internet and potentially even Clark in this episode was like, I think one of my children should have gotten powers over the other because this is just a mess. Because John spends the whole episode just wanting to be able to help people and be a part of a community for in his own way and not having Clark's legacy like weighing on him. And can we get into Kyle real quick? Because Kyle, once again, I'm not even stressed, I'm just angry. Like he just angers me so much. He angered me in the episode before, he's angering me now. I mainly because how dare he tell a child that they can't talk to their parent about what's going on at work? He's 16 years old. He's volunteered here.
Nasty behavior.
It is. And that was like, did he outright and say it? No, but it was very much heavily implied. And I hated that conversation because he made it seem like it was wrong and that like in-house, like firehouse conversations should stay in the firehouse. Like, first of all, it wasn't a conversation. It was an entire switch up of behavior. Second of all, you're a grown person. And I know you'd fly off the handle if anyone told Sarah or your daughter, whose name is escaping me, that they can't talk to you.
Wait, what is the baby's name?
Sophie, isn't it?
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, there we go. If someone tells
Justice
Sarah
for
and Sophie.
Sophie still, don't forget it.
No, you know what? Did anyone ask where that baby was during the tornado?
Nope.
No one cared.
Lana was working, Kyle was at the firehouse, Sarah was at the cafe. No one worried about Sophie.
Sarah does not care about her sister.
No.
It's true, and so sad. But like that, just Kyle did switch up, and Kyle's anger. It's funny that he was like, we need to handle our anger one-on-one. Like if you're bothered by something that's happening in the firehouse, you need to come directly to me so we can hash it out. I was like, the hypocrisy. You're actually bothered that Clark came to you to tell you about your behavior politely and asked you to treat his son like a normal person and not like Superman's son, and that he didn't come to ask you for help. But you're not addressing that with Clark. You're addressing that with his son.
Mm-hmm. Kyle really frustrated me in this episode because that first scene when he stood up for Jonathan, I was like, yes, Kyle, absolutely. Tell that other rude man how it is. That's great. Perfect. But then you find out he was doing it for the wrong reasons, and that if he hadn't found out Clark was Superman, he still would have been that arrogant boss who made Jonathan have to fight for that t-shirt with his name on it. And the only reason he treated him differently was that his dad was Superman. Didn't like that. And then he pivoted in the completely opposite direction. It was like, oh, you can talk to me about anything. I think the whole point was that it was supposed to be, you can come to me man to man and I'll see you for who you are, not a Superman son. Did not come off like that in the slightest. Like you said, it came off as though he was telling him that if you have a problem, take it up with me, but not in so many words. That's definitely a Kyle thing to do, and a very regressive Kyle thing to do, because I thought he'd moved past that kind of like, I'm the big man kind of version of himself. Apparently not. We're running out of time because we don't know how much we'll see of him next season. But like, yeah, he was only in like two major scenes in the episode, and incredibly infuriating in both of them.
They both were terrible. To your point about the man who was like getting angry, I was like, there is a learning thing here that John should pay attention to orders and make sure he checks the bags, but aggressively telling him that he needs to go back and get your orders. Can't we just both go to the thing together? Or tell him, you messed up my order. Can I get my burger? Because everyone's eating, but I don't have food.
Exactly.
And John did want to go back and get it. Even with him being spoken to that way, he did want to go like, oh, I messed that up. Let me just go back. And Kyle was like, no, he'll be fine. And I was like, well, he doesn't have his food. He doesn't have lunch. He's being really rude, but he doesn't have his order. I know Jonathan said later in the episode, I think to Jordan, that he just wants to belong and he just wants to be able to fit in there and hang out with these guys. And I was like, they haven't said a kind thing yet to you. We haven't had any bonding moments. I'd find another fire station.
I would just quit if I was him. It's not worth it.
It's not. Can we find other ways to like volunteer? Is there a local shelter? Is there is there a Smallville version of a Goodwill? Like, we can help people in other ways. Volunteer at the hospital.
Why has no one opened the Talon yet? I'm waiting, Michael. You know I am. Like, I'm waiting for these teens to start a business. like a self-respecting CW show. Why are these teens running a business?
I'm telling you, season 4 will start with Sarah. I've changed Vicky May's name to the Talon, and she'll be running it.
Gorgeous. I love it.
Give her something to do besides what she's been doing.
Yeah.
It's gonna be like
that's her purpose.
Kim Kardashian scene, like, if you don't run a business, you don't know what it's like running a business. She's gonna be screaming this to her mom. I know that.
No, it'll be like, I'm running the whole time.
Oh goodness! What was Lana talking about shipping delays? Were we just being a mayor, or do you think this is going to come back into the storyline at some point?
Yeah, this is bothering me. They haven't given Lana any mayoral stuff to do, so the best we get is that she's stressed on the phone and hangs up right before she has a conversation with Sarah. Probably won't come back in again. I would like to see her doing something with the town, since they repaired it pretty quickly after Superman and that man destroyed it in that fight a few weeks ago. But I just like to see. I fear we're running out of time with Lana. I want to spend more time with her being the mayor.
It's sad. I feel like this episode also gave a lot of people who were like, yes to the cuts, so much vindication. Because I was like, no, I'm not team all 7 people should go. I just want everyone to have stronger storylines. And if they can do that in recurring or guest roles, I'd really appreciate that. But this episode, I felt like, like, did y'all care about anybody but Clark, Lois, and Lex? Because everybody else was struggling.
It's tiring.
Yeah.
It's really been tiring this season with the up and down with everybody else.
And and this was an episode that focused only on the ensemble cast, and yet we were still missing John Henry, Natalie, and Chrissy. I was going, well, Chrissy not so much, but John Henry and
didn't even
Natalie.
notice she was
Yeah,
gone.
and
No
I
shade.
think they threw a line in that she was sick. It's not that wouldn't miss Chrissy. The point is, I'm saying John Henry and Natalie are usually two of the characters that actually have their heads screwed on, and you like to see them do things because more often than not, unless it involves each other, they're quite logical characters. So we did miss them, and we were left with the illogical people. And there was a lot of illogical thinking in that episode. I do agree. I think a character like Sarah and maybe Chrissy could benefit from guest roles or recurring roles, because then they wouldn't have to find a way to shoehorn conflict for them in every single episode. Heck, I think Jordan could benefit from a recurring role at this point. But like, you know what I mean? I just feel like,
wait, who'd you say?
Jordan could benefit from a recurring role at this point, because again, they wouldn't have to shoehorn conflict in for him every episode. Give him the one conflict and let it play out over his 5 episodes or however many he's allotted. But yeah, I was excited to spend time with the cast outside of Clark and Lois, and this episode left me want to spend more time with Clark and Lois.
For sure. And we got another one of those like Lois openings where we were going through the aftermath of mastectomy and her saying, you know, when you change, she had a bodily change, you have to step into it. She decided that she was going to move forward and she was going to be who she is, and she was going to accept who she is physically. And I guess, you know, the trauma of going through cancer treatment, but embrace who she is as well. And I like that scene. But then it was done. I feel like that was perhaps the closure of the cancer storyline. Like, we're done now. It just felt like they were like, it seemed final when she buttoned up that shirt. She looked herself in the mirror, had that final voiceover, and we might be closing that chapter. And that's, of course, they talk about reconstructive surgery, because I know that was a talking point in one of the episodes. But they might just do that with a throwaway line in season 4.
They didn't Lois said, Lex, my doctors have a positive outlook or something like that. They've been feeding in little lines like that to let us know that, okay, I think we're ready to move into the next chapter. Maybe she'll get an official, like, kind of like all clear at the end of the season 3, just so that we can know they've left that storyline in the past and they're ready to move on from it. But I agree, it's definitely taken a back seat recently, and I know it's nice to see them move on through their lives. But considering it was handling the storyline so well, I do hope that there is some kind of closure to it, and we don't just move straight into Lex being the big villain like any other Superman story.
You know what I really liked? I really liked Lex's rock music motif. I enjoyed that.
Yes.
I like
that was so good. Every time I was just,
I loved it over the opening. Like, I love what they've done with music this season, because it wasn't over the title card. It wasn't the same score. It's been different depending on the vibe of the episode. But I really enjoyed it this episode. It was a good motif.
And it definitely paved the way for his arrival, because he's there to make some noise.
Yeah.
Cannot wait to see what he gets up to in the finale, since we have Bizarro finally back. He's been here all season, and they have really only been showing him to us like in the end episodes. I'm assuming he brought that man down here to be bait for Bizarro. Because he's like, well, how are we supposed to get him out? It's like, I believe he's using you to get Bizarro out. He's feeding him. But, I mean, rest in peace to that man, because that surely wasn't Lex screaming.
Yeah, no, what a terrible way to go. Everyone was excited when they saw Otis Graves, because Otis is one of Lex's right-hand men in the comics. But R.I.P. Otis, he did not last long at all. I assume now Lex is going to try to manipulate Bizarro into doing something. I know there's supposed to be a big, huge storyline adapted in the season finale, and now it looks like Bizarro Superman will somehow be involved in it. They've really run with this, considering he was one of the primary villains of season 2, and they brought him back, and then have like peppered it all the way out until the end of season 3. It serves the overarching storyline well, but I wonder what kind of role he'll play into it, because that final scene was something else.
And now my man was out here eating rodents to stay alive.
Yeah, and then people
who really fallen from season 2 for him, for a thing. But I mean, yeah, I'm excited for the finale just to see what it is, since they hyped it so much and there's a cliffhanger. And I know we're glad we're getting a season 4, because I know Tyler was like, yeah, I'm happy that we got a season 4, because I have been sorry for y'all if we didn't.
That means the finale better live up to expectations. It sounds like there might be a cliffhanger. Can't wait to see what they do. Ready for it. I know the show tends to deliver in its finale, so can't wait for it.